I am Katrina and I live in Brooklyn, New York.
I'm Curtis and I'm a student at Oneonta High School.
I'm Greg, I live in Jersey City and I work in Manhattan.
I'm Hannah, I live in Oneonta, New York and I'm homeschooled.
Hey, I'm Solomon and I'm from Manhattan. And yeah, I'm graduating from the School of the Future.
I'm Katie. I live in Oneonta, New York, and I'm homeschooled.
I'm Aaron. I live in Bainbridge, New York, and I go to Bainbridge Guilford High School.
I'm Daniela. I live in the Bronx, and I'm going off to college this year.
I'm Tim. I'm from Oneonta, New York, and I attend Oneonta High School.
I'm Mary. I live in New York City, and I'm going to be graduating this year. I know that global warming is happening. It will happen in the future when I'm still alive. And it's hard because I feel like even if I do something, it won't have a chain reaction, so others will do it. So I feel like if I'm the only one doing it, why bother? And I feel like everyone has the same opinion.
The idea of peak oil didn't mean too much to me, even as it was presented to me in class, until I realized how much oil is used.
I think it is possible that we could have huge famines and humans dying in really great numbers. I'm just not sure how likely that is.
For the future, I don't know if I'm going to be able to have this, or that if my children will have this. Will they be able to ride in a car or anything that we take for granted, or have clean drinking water?
Sometimes I want to believe, oh, someone will figure out something, you know, there has to be some way, oh, it's gonna be fine. But those are only just certain days.
I wish like I didn't really see it, because I don't really want to change. Like I don't see myself changing. I don't see any of my family or friends changing, just people in my class, so.
I mostly understand it. I mostly feel like this is happening, and it's just every once in a while when I'm trying to talk to people about it that I get a little discouraged, and I'm like, well, maybe this really isn't happening, and maybe I'm not supposed to be trying to explain it to people, and it's just hard.
Richard Brandt. I'm a research meteorologist from the University of Washington, and I study polar climate. I'm particularly interested in making field measurements of how energy flows within the climate system.
I was just wondering if you had any thoughts as to the purposeful attempt to discredit global warming and make it seem like any other political issue where there's two valid sides.
No, I really like your question, and there's a lot of reasons why people choose to misinform the public, and often they're economic and political reasons. So, for instance, if you're say a senator from an oil-producing state like Oklahoma, you might compare the EPA to a Gestapo, which actually just happened recently, and say that climate warming is simply a hoax. And the purpose for doing that, it's pretty clear to me, it's that, you know, your big backers are people who own oil wells, and they're scared that all of a sudden the value of oil is going to go down if CO2 is going to be taxed. Well, I think climate change, there's three things that come to mind that are of grave concern. One is the speed at which it's changing. It's very rare to see the climate change this quickly, and so biological systems can't respond to these quick changes, and so we sort of expect to see an increase in the number of species going extinct, which is going on right now. We're seeing more species become extinct than new species coming in. So we're in an extinction right now. A second element of climate change, as the planet gets warmer, we're going to see a lot of areas become more desert-like than have been in the past, and even the American Southwest is at risk for this. The third thing that comes to mind is as the climate warms up, it actually warms the ocean as well, and so as the ocean water warms, it expands, and so we see ocean levels rising. And as the bulk of human population lives near the coast, there are a lot of people at risk from serious storms, much like Katrina. A number of things I think are going to be quite different for the people of the next generation. And one that is rarely talked about, it's actually a taboo. It's the human population on Earth. And there's a question of what the sustainable population is. And this overlaps with political and with religious beliefs, and it's a very complicated issue that I don't think our generation is going to even tackle, but is deeply connected with the carbon dioxide issue. For instance, if Americans can become twice as efficient, so we use half the energy that we use today, but in 50 years there's twice as many people on Earth, we're exactly where we started. And so until we grapple with that problem, I think it's going to be a very difficult time.
There's the one side of what are we going to replace oil with? And then there's the side of like, what do we need to change? Like, what do we need to change culturally? And what do we need to change in the way we design our towns and the way we interact with each other? What's going to need to change on a very basic day-to-day human interaction level? And I haven't heard a single politician talk about that, and I think that that's really, really important.
It's a lot of pressure, and I can understand why they're saying things like, well, let's not let the people panic, and it's ridiculous, but I don't know that I would be able to do too much better in that situation. I mean, I don't know.
If people can inform themselves to the point where they actually know what a president stands for, what a politician stands for, then they can make a good choice and elect a person who understands their views and is willing to implement policies to effect change.
I'm Sherry Bollard, and I have the privilege of representing the 24th District of New York. And also, I'm fortunate enough to serve as chairman of the House Science Committee. Learning about peak oil and global climate change for young people is extremely important. These issues will have a dramatic impact on their future.
How long do you believe it will take before the majority of people wise up to this entire situation of global warming and peak oil and begin to do something about it?
Congresspeople are getting letters from people back home, not as part of some organized campaign, but just sincere expressions of concern. And we want you to do something about it. We elect you to represent us. And this scares me. This is a big problem in the future. Do something about it. And Congress people pay attention to their letters from back home. I'm sure a lot of people are cynical, say nobody pays attention. Baloney, we do pay attention. We do, whether we're Republican or Democrat. Because the people that are writing us, if they're from my hometown or my home county or my home district, they're going to determine whether or not I stay in office. You can never have unanimity of opinion on such a broad subject, but the overwhelming scientific consensus, that's what has to guide me as a policymaker. The overwhelming scientific consensus says global climate change is for real, peak oil is a potential serious problem, and we've got to do something about it. Find out what my view is.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Thank you.
How fragile it is.
Thank you.
All right.
People need to learn about solar energy, how to install, create solar panels, and just how to operate with reduced energy consumption. You know, they need to consider other ways of living because our way is obviously not sustainable.
I am Peter Arnold, and I direct a program called Pathways to a Sustainable Future.
Probably in the future, it will be growing. I think the alternative energies are absolutely critical. We have to use less fossil fuels so that the carbon dioxide load on the atmosphere not only is lowered, but is reduced. Don't you think that's kind of amazing? Yeah. That's the heat being collected by this tube, and then it's being transferred up to there. So that's the heat that gets into this water and gets moved around and stored in the tank. Now the last thing we can do is turn on the hot water.
Wow, that's warm. Yeah, that's warm enough for like a shower or anything. Oh, it is.
So remember that the sun is low in the sky in the winter and high in the sky in the summer. And these are the two angles. This angle, if you follow it out, puts the winter sun, way low, 20 degrees, not very high. And the summer sun is 70 degrees. It's going high in the sky, way up, 70 degrees, even higher, shining down at the house. Yes, like that. How's your shadows looking? Yeah? The windows covered? There, good. Who knows what this stuff is made of? Most of it. Silicon, glass. And it makes electricity by interacting with the photons coming from the sunlight, and the photons go down into the material. And you can actually see here, there's two layers. There's an upper layer and a bottom layer. And the sunlight comes in, the photons come in and excite one of the electrons in the silicon atom. And it gets so excited, it leaves home. It just jumps ship. Right. It takes off. And they migrate to the top and get connected to these strips and then go out the wire. It worked. So, congratulations, you've made a solar battery charger. So, what I want to show you is how we make biodiesel. All the big trucks on the road, they're all diesels. Oh, most of them are diesels. And I have a little diesel car, my Jetta, out here. So it's very possible to make an alternative fuel, a renewable fuel that works in diesel vehicles. And as a matter of fact, it's the easiest one because you don't have to change the engine. All you have to do is make this fuel, and the engine actually likes it.
Would it be possible to make your own biodiesel, like at home or something?
It is. This is a pretty simple operation, and I'm going to tell you about how we use this equipment in just a minute. But it's very possible to do in a blender. And I think that the take-home message is that this isn't a difficult technology. It's a simple technology that can be done on a very local level, or it could be done at a state level. Unlike petroleum, where you have these big cracking plants, and it has to be imported from somewhere else in the world. Biodiesel can be done locally. So we can take some responsibility for our own fuels and for our own fuel security.
I'm Richard Heinberg. I'm a writer and a college teacher. I've written books on peak oil, one called The Party's Over and one called Power Down. It takes energy to get energy. It takes energy to drill an oil well. It takes energy to build a solar photovoltaic panel. So the question is, how much energy do you have to invest versus how much energy will you get out at the end of the day? The amazing benefit of fossil fuels is that they have an enormously high energy profit ratio. With oil, for example, you may have to invest 1 barrel of oil's worth of energy to get maybe 50 barrels of oil out at the end of the day, or even more. So that's an enormous profit ratio, 50 to 1. With hydrogen, it's a negative ratio. In other words, you have to invest more energy to get a little bit out. The same thing with biofuels, ethanol, biodiesel. It's maybe a positive ratio, but it's very low compared to what we've known historically with fossil fuels. Once you realize how valuable this stuff is and realize that it's going to be going away soon, then it makes what remains that much more important. Are we just going to put it into our gas tanks and burn it? Like, how much work did it take to build the Great Pyramid in Egypt? Well, it took 20,000 people working for maybe 20 years. We use enough energy every day in the US, just going out people's tailpipes as they're driving to and from the mall, to build 100 Great Pyramids every day. And what do we get for it? Do we get 100 Great Pyramids? No, we just get one day's trips to the mall. So if we're going to use the oil that we have left, we should use it for some purpose, like helping us make this great energy transition.
We are running out of oil, but we do have oil. We just don't have the technology to extract it from where we can. So do you think we're right now really is peak oil, or is peak oil going to occur later if we come out with some new technology or something?
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of different opinions on this subject. I think that we're very close to the peak right now, because even though there's still a lot of oil out there, and even in places where we haven't even gone yet, like the North Pole and really deep ocean water, it's going to take a while before we'll be able to start the process of extraction in those places. And meanwhile, the world's really largest oil fields in places like the Middle East are going into decline. And so these other smaller fields in out-of-the-way places, once those come online, they'll be enough to make the downward curve more gentle. But they're not going to be enough to postpone the peak, in my view. And that will have effects all throughout the economy. It'll also affect how we eat, because our food is heavily dependent on fossil fuels, especially oil. The typical item on our plate has traveled 1,500 miles to get there by truck. So what happens when the diesel fuel for the trucks starts to double in price or triple in price? That makes the food more expensive. Also, we grow the food using fossil fuels for fertilizer, pesticides, herbicides, and so on. All of those things will also make the food more expensive.
I'm Rebecca Morgan. It's been very rainy and we haven't been able to get these tomatoes in the ground, which means that they're very leggy, which means that they've grown a really long stem. Farming was always a passion for me. I think a lot of it had to do with growing up in the community that I grew up in, which was a very low-income, poor farming community, and just seeing people struggle with their livelihood, seeing these farms go out of business, and I just became very interested in how people survive and how people struggle to survive.
So this is only your second?
This is our second year. So now you can take those up to the top. There's a lot that we can do to address the peak oil situation in terms of food production. Okay, so this is the second row here.
Where does it go?
Here. So what we need to do is learn how to preserve food. We need to learn how to grow it, obviously. 2, we're going to have to really develop local networks where people can easily and affordably buy the food that is grown in that region.
With people's social habits today, would you think any of them would have to be curbed by a more localized food diet, or do you think we'd be able to kind of make do with our current, culture right now, or would we have to make drastic changes?
We would have to make some drastic changes. People are very accustomed right now to get whatever they want whenever they want it in terms of food. Those drastic changes are necessary. They're critical. It is critical that people understand that these food options, as we have available to us today, will not be the same options 20 years from now. They just won't. On-demand food shopping is the ability to get whatever you want whenever you want it, which is very different than how it was even as recently as 1950s. As recently as 1950s in the United States, the majority of food that people consumed was local food, which meant that my parents growing up always had a cellar full of canned beets, canned tomatoes, canned sauerkraut, frozen food in their freezer. I mean, there were always supplies in the winter that were what the family actually put away from the season's harvest. When we build a local food system, so much more of our dollars will stay in a community. Right now, when you go to your local supermarket and you purchase food, the vast majority of those dollars are shipped out to headquarters in another county, in another state, in another country. If we develop our local food system, there are estimations that at least 65% more available money stays in the community based on a local food system. If you buy your food at the farmers markets and at the CSA, farmers turn around and utilize that money in those communities in turn, getting their machinery repaired, hiring labor. Every farmer I know in this area needs help. And every farmer I know could use a couple strong teenagers periodically to come work on their farm. And every family I know could use some fresh produce from local farms or some fresh meat from local farms. And I think that there's a way to integrate young people into the production of food in a way that is exciting, in a way that brings good food to their families, in a way that teaches them how to farm, teaches them about business. If they help a farm go to a farmer's market, or if they help a farm get ready for a CSA, or if they help a farm package and prepare food for sale, it's young people a connection to the earth. Thank you so much.
I'm Omar Freya. And I'm the founder of Green Worker Cooperatives in the South Bronx.
It's about the fact that we don't have good quality food in the area, that we don't really have jobs that don't kill people in the process. We got plenty of jobs for people who are looking to shorten their lifespan, dangerous jobs, but we don't really have jobs that actually contribute to the health of the community. If you know about a pressure cooker, it's this huge giant pot with a lid on it, and there's a little valve at the top, and you use it when you want to cook beans really fast. Well, our communities are like that little valve on top of the pressure cooker. So the fact that we exist means that, you know, ExxonMobil, all these companies that continue to pollute, and everyone else who continues to do the things that kill people in the long run, they're allowed to continue doing their thing because they always have a dumping ground. You know, so we're that dumping ground, we're that pressure release valve. What I care about is that money stays in my community, that people have a say at work, that a business doesn't kill people in the community that it's located in. That's what I care about. Our first cooperative will be a retail warehouse for salvaged building materials, basically a Home Depot for used stuff, and is actually able to put a resource into people's homes, you know, giving people the opportunity to get a cabinet at half of what they would pay for it at Home Depot. And that actually makes home ownership more affordable and starting up a business more affordable.
Hey,
¿Cómo está?
muy bien. Perdón por el sábado.
But we're gonna start small with 4 people. We got more than 4 people that are interested in it. So we're gonna take them through a training process about how to listen and how to work together, and you know, what does it mean to work together in a business. And then, you know, we watch, you know, the people, you know, see how they do. And the people, you know, after a couple weeks that we feel, all right, these are the ones, these are the gems that we can start with, and those will be the ones that, you know, we start the co-op with.
All
right, I got it. Okay.
Cooperatives are accountable to their communities. They don't gas their neighbors. They don't get up and leave town. The profits, the money that's generated by a business that is owned by its workers or it's owned by its consumers, that money stays in the community because the workers stay there in the community, the consumers stay in the community. So there's a completely different relationship there.
Well, I know of a lot of people who think of the idea of cooperatives as some sort of communist action and it's anti-capitalist. But why is this not necessarily the anti-capitalist thing to do and just the thing for the community and that sort of thing?
Because what we know of in the United States is a form of business that's dominated by mega corporations that have very little accountability to anybody. And that's seen as freedom, but it's really freedom for the rich, you know, freedom for the very wealthy to do whatever they want. What we're talking about is real freedom, where, you know, democracy becomes about people, you know, everybody really having a say over their own life, which is not a new thing. You know, it exists in other parts of the world, has had great success in parts of Spain and Italy, where they've they've remade their whole economy and really were able to turn a region around, an entire region that had gone to hell and high water, that had been forgotten about, very much like the South Bronx had been forgotten about. But they've been able to remake their economy and provide jobs for people in their communities and keep the money in the community and actually give workers a real say, which I think is, you know, critical.
We're all
After I was done with feeling scared of what's going to happen with the future, I started feeling more really happy about the idea of this being an opportunity to change things.
No one's going to come and save everyone. People have to save themselves. People have to look deeper and, you know, find in themselves the ability to make changes.
But it's also going to be very exciting to find ways of meeting basic human needs. And I think for young people, it's going to be a very exciting time to be alive because, you know, we all like to have challenges. We all like to feel that our contribution to the world is important. Well, here's an opportunity to make enormous contributions because the world is going to need every single person who has some vision, some ability, some knowledge to help us make this very important transition.